Welcome to Clean Titans. Today we have James Powell. He's going to tell us about his work with UNICEF and Orlis.
Orklys.
Welcome, James. To start, could you give us a little bit about your background and tell us about your journey? What sparked your passion for working at the intersection of innovation, technology, and social impact, particularly in the context of clean energy?
Yeah, sure. I'd be happy to. And thanks for having me, Ali. It's a pleasure to be here. Wonderful. Thanks. For background, 20 years ago, I left the UK and I've been moving around jobs in different places around the world since. And I've landed now in Denmark, where I've established Orklys. Prior to this, I was working with the UN at UNICEF. I'd been there for over 10 years working in innovation, supporting UNICEF country offices around the world on a variety of different challenges we can get into later. And before that, I was working in the private sector. So I feel like I've come full circle. I've started in the private sector, worked in multilateral institutions in different places around the world. And now I've come back and I've co-founded Orklys just last year.
Tell us about Orklys. What is the core problem it addresses, and what's the innovation and the solution you're bringing to the table to revolutionize energy ownership?
Yeah, so I think we'll start with the name, which is always a tongue twister for people, but it comes from that has Nordic roots, and the Norse roots of the name are the orc, which can mean power or energy and strength in some of the Norse languages, including Swedish. Then lus means light in many of the Norse languages. So that's the origin of the company. We believe passionately that people are the center of the green transformation and the green transition. We believe that decentralized renewable energy is scalable and that communities play a pivotal role in helping us to reach our goals in doing that. So really, to understand what we do, we need to kind of start with the community and what energy communities are. Most people that I talk to aren't aware of energy communities. Essentially, they're groups of people in an established business. It could be a cooperative, but it could be any type of private business. And they're driven to produce, share, own, and sell, in some cases, their own renewable energy. So, but it's scalable. So it's not necessarily a couple of houses in a street getting together with some rooftop solar, but this can be people that are powering tens of thousands of homes. But it's very much community-led. So at Orklys, what we're trying to do is empower, support, and accelerate their mission. We're hoping that by providing technology into the mix of the incredible and complex process they need to go through to be successful, that we can help them along the way, be more efficient, make less mistakes, and get to their desired outcome quicker and faster. So that's really what we're trying to do here.
You aim to transform consumers into producers. Can you elaborate on the mechanics of this transformation and the key benefits for individuals and communities?
So there's a financially sustainable model around which this works. Okay, so once you have an energy community established, you can source funding, build your designs, choose your technology, and establish your renewable energy asset. It could be a solar park, could be a wind farm, could be both, could be focusing on storage, geothermal. That's a big choice to make, right? But once you've made it, what you're able to do is essentially operate in two ways. One is you can be an energy producer, or two, you can be an energy retailer. So in the deregulated markets, particularly in Europe, but also in the US, in certain states and other places around the world, you can basically establish a company that produces energy and sells blocks of that energy either to the spot market, to commercial buyers, industry, or to homes. So people that want to participate in your community can come in, they can buy one share. It entitles them to a certain amount of energy, maybe 1,000 kilowatts. Depending on the size of your home, you might consume that in a year, or maybe if you're in a 4-bedroom house, you're consuming maybe 4,000 kilowatt hours of energy. So you can buy this, and now you own that for life. Now that money goes into raising the critical and heavy capital expenditure you need to establish your wind farm or your solar park. Once it's established and producing energy, that member of that community or shareholder is now entitled to either the proceeds from that power in the producer model, or they might actually completely switch over their energy company to the community. And that's more of the retail model where the community is actually selling the energy to each other in a decentralized system where they're managing it and operating it themselves. So that's the innovation is actually in the financial model. It's been around for a while. It's been done before, and Denmark was a leader in this. And what we're seeing now is a bit of a policy shift where you're starting to see the EU in particular embrace these communities and understand the potential that they have. So that's kind of how it works. What we're trying to do is like support the digitization of that. That's a relatively succinct summary of the problem that we're trying to solve.
What are the main barriers preventing wider community ownership of renewable energy projects today, and how does Orklys overcome them?
Well, I think one of the biggest barriers is that when you essentially go into this, when you meet energy communities, you understand that they have a huge amount of determination to try this. It's massively ambitious because these projects take a long time. Okay, so one of the biggest challenges is that you're on a massive learning curve. You're not a renewable energy developer, but you're trying to be one from a community standpoint. So you have a big learning curve to go through in terms of even understanding how much energy that you need for your community. Estimating that on its own can be a big challenge. Selecting the right type of technology, another massive challenge. Not to mention when you get into developing business cases and being, your viability technically and financially. Permits can take ages. Despite steps taken to improve legislation, a lot of governments don't meet their own standards in this. So you face a number of barriers before you even get to build, before you get to construction. So if you look at a renewable energy project, typically across the whole process from your conception to actually operation, about 70% of your time is spent in the run up to the construction. So it's actually full of barriers. And for people that are interested in innovation, it's asking to be disrupted. There's a number of ways that innovative companies, and there are many, can try and improve those processes and help energy communities succeed through some of these barriers.
I see that Orklys is a fintech platform. How is financial technology playing a crucial role in enabling greater participation in renewable energy?
I think fintech is definitely one way of describing it. Finance is a big part of what we do. We support planning in the first instance, which is a big part of the process before you get to the financing. We do help with the financing as well. We help bring in those members to buy those shares and raise that capital, as well as other financiers that can participate. And we support on the procurement and operation. I think a part around digital finance where that enables, and that coincides with like the kind of legislative environment, is when you first did these things a long time ago, it would be the immediate people that lived around you that could participate. What innovative finance and financial technology enable us to do is remove a lot of the friction that prevents a lot of other people participating. So it can be relatively friction-free, which means quite easy to participate and overcome barriers. So you shouldn't have to go through a process of registering, waiting for a form, filling in a form, getting an invoice, sending in some money, waiting for a certificate, and all of the back and forth. That can all happen in an instant now. That enables you to go a bit broader than your immediate surroundings as well. It enables us to say, you know what, you don't need to be right next to the renewable energy asset to participate. You could be in a city, you could be in social housing, and maybe you want to participate in the green transition, right? But you don't own your own home, you can't put solar on your roof, right? But you want to participate. And also there's a financial opportunity for you as well, and you want to participate in that. And you should have the right to do so. And so financial technology is a leveler. It enables this wider participation, and there's a degree of equity about that I love personally. that enables this like broader participation of all different parts of society in the transition.
What types of renewable energy projects are best suited for community ownership? And are there any specific regions or markets where this model is particularly promising?
So, I mean, personally, I'm agnostic to the type of technology, which I think is a good thing, right? Because different communities, different geographies will have different levels of suitability. And there might be hybrid models as well, where you combine wind and solar to bring a hybrid model for more stability to deal with the intermittency you see around renewable energy generation. Okay, which means for anyone that's listening that isn't familiar, we're talking about, the ability for solar to produce a lot of energy in the summer to the point where sometimes you can even see negative prices. And here in the Nordics, not very much in the winter where it's dark a lot, right? So, but there's a lot of wind. I think there's a lot of different factors that go into it. And part of that decision making depends on the capacity factor of where you live, the planning permission you can get, the preferences for the community around you, administrative maps that support some technologies and do not support others. All of these factors have to come into account. So I think that there's a lot of different solutions or combinations of solutions. In terms of market, what you can say is that for this type of energy community operation, citizen-led, there's a rich history in cooperatives, both in the UK, where I'm originally from, but also, of course, in Denmark for hundreds of years, actually comes from farming. Right, so it's not really a surprise that the Danes are kind of leading when it comes to like energy communities. There's different types of energy communities, but if you put them all together, there's around 500 in Denmark, which is slightly more than the UK, but the population is only about a tenth of the size. Okay, and then you have parts of Eastern Europe that are just having their first energy communities now, right? So in many ways, we're on the cusp of something. Now, as you know, I've also worked in low-income countries in my time with the UN. There's a massive opportunity there, a huge opportunity. One, some of the legislative barriers that protect national grids that you find in Europe don't exist in places where there aren't national grids. So there's a big opportunity there because you can potentially like leapfrog that whole kind of part of development. It's similar to how developing countries leapfrogged when it came to mobile technology. They absolutely led on mobile money, right? It was East Africa in Kenya where that first happened, right? And then you could have exactly the same with energy, where you start seeing communities take ownership of their energy and actually support the nation in a kind of a massive contribution towards energy independence. So that's a huge opportunity. So in short, if I'm going to sum it up, the opportunity is global, depending on like different types of legislation. But in every market that we've looked at, there's an opportunity, and in some places that it's quite vibrant.
What are some of the biggest challenges you've faced in developing and launching Orklys, and how have you overcome them?
So I think when you start a new company, you face a million challenges all at once quite quickly, from assembling a team, finding investment. But I think the most important ones and some of the biggest ones have been trying to focus in on really making sure we understand our customers' needs properly, right? Which is a mark where if you get that wrong, you're toast. And I think my own personal struggle with that was certainly at the beginning. I could see the applicability of our technology to a lot of different parts of the renewable energy industry. And it did actually take me a while to always included energy communities in it. But I think, the biggest shift we made is that we just decided, look, we've got to focus on energy communities. We've had opportunities to go in different directions, but my co-founder and I have always come back to, no, let's stick to the discipline of supporting energy communities. This is where we're going to prove our concept. It's where we really feel passionate about having and providing the support. So I think that's part of it. And then there's other various technical challenges as well. In terms of the speed of development, you're spoiled with AI tools, spoiled with them. I can't even tell you how many I use, but it's a lot. And in a way, it helps massively. But it can also be a bit of a distraction because you can do a lot right now. But I think what I'm finding overall is, like, if you can keep your focus and your discipline, actually, you can develop your product way faster. We're actually ahead of most of our internal development deadlines. So we'll see how that goes once we onboard more users. But so far, our plans we're basically ahead of our plans a little bit, so that's quite nice.
Looking ahead, what is your long-term vision for Orklys, and what impact do you hope to have on the energy landscape?
I think I'll start with the second part of that, because I think it's more about the long-term vision in general is around making it possible for any community that wants to have independent source of renewable energy, making that a possibility. That's what I'd love to see in the world. That's why I decided to dedicate the rest of my career to innovation within renewable energy. And for Orklys, I would just like us to be a part of that. I'd like us to add a lot of value along the way. Hopefully we can help make it possible. I mean, Ali, there's different estimates, right? But in some of the academic literature, you'll find estimates ranging from 30 to 70% of a state's entire energy need could be provided by energy communities. But today it's less than 2%. Okay, so that tells me that energy communities have a lot of potential to fulfill, right? If they can get the support to overcome the barriers that are in front of them. So in economic terms, that's an addressable market, quite a big one.
So, which markets are you currently operating in, and where are you planning to go to next?
So we're starting in Denmark. We feel that we should be able to prove the concept right here, which is kind of the home of, global renewable energy innovation. It begins in Denmark, turbines invented in Denmark. And from a societal perspective, there's quite a lot of cohesion in the communities, at least the ones that I've been fortunate enough to be exposed to. So we'll try and prove the concept here. We are building out in the open, so which means that we'll share our mistakes along the way, right, as we develop. But as we move towards our P, we should have that out in June or early July at the latest. So we hope to be able to get moving there. We've had a lot of interest already from people that want to be members of energy communities. A lot of people have signed up to our waitlist on the platform to join. And we've got a few projects that we're currently evaluating to bring on board onto the platform. So all of these things are moving in parallel. So far, we've had a good level of validation from the market, is what I would say, from the people that we talk to. I think that over the course of the summer, hopefully you'll see some good movement from us here. And then, we like to think big. So we'll look towards Europe, and then we'll look beyond that for sure next year.
Your background includes significant work at UNICEF, driving innovation and scaling impact. How did your experience there shape your perspective on the role of technology and entrepreneurship in addressing global challenges, and how does that inform your work at Orklys?
Well, I'd say that I've been fortunate to work for such a wonderful organization like UNICEF. I don't think a lot of people realize the amazing work they do in innovation. I think in high-income countries, there's a certain perception around the work, but in fact, there's a ton of innovation happening. And I've been lucky to be exposed to that on 4 continents. And I think it enables you to dream big, right? You start realizing that your perceptions of the world are not real when you start meeting with the people that you get to work within the communities, or whether it's in governments. The stereotypes are largely false. You start finding political will in places you might not have expected to find it, and strong collaborations of people that really want to solve big problems. And I think that, that's what I take away from my time is, hopefully we make a valuable contribution there. Hopefully we've been able to innovate, to put power in people's hands to make a big impact. I strongly believe we have. But it enables you to kind of dream big when you start seeing that. And I find a lot of commonalities in the different societies and countries where I've worked in terms of the passion of people to solve big problems. Often in innovation, the innovation itself is not what starts the movement. Okay, it's the will is there, right? But it's the innovation can unlock the movement. Okay, that's why I get conflicted with this term empowerment, like this idea that you can empower someone else. I don't know if that's true at all. Honestly, I think that people they know their problems, they have a desire to solve their problems, and they're empowered. Right? They just need sometimes they need a tool that will unlock all of that potential, and I think that's what enables me to dream. So I'm still an optimist, despite the massive challenges that the UN faces right now, and that people in low income countries in particular are facing at the moment.
You mentioned the 5D Innovation Investment Framework. Could you briefly explain this framework and how can it be applied in its investment in clean energy sector?
So the 5D, five-dimensional, it's an innovation framework that we developed actually in my time at UNICEF with a fantastic team there, wonderful colleagues who kind of identified that when you're managing a portfolio of innovations, which is like the approach we took, how are you making sure you assess them for being able to deliver maximum impact from a global scale? And what we also find, by the way, is that with the absence of a framework, the people can go in all sorts of different directions. And sometimes you might end up working on an innovation project for which a solution already exists. So part of it was just trying to make sure that any duplication was removed, efficiency was improved, impact for every dollar spent was also improved. And we focused on 5 dimensions, which include innovation, which meant is what you're doing and improvement on all what already exists, right? Which makes you ask and understand what does already exist. You need to know the landscape you're working in, okay? Impact is a second dimension. Like, what is your pathway to deliver an impact to improve someone's life, and how effective can you be in achieving it? Risk is third dimension. Financial risk, reputational risk, and how you manage and mitigate your risks needs to be a considered part, and probably the most important risk, which is do no harm, right? That's a principle that you work on in innovation in the humanitarian sector. So making sure that we've understood all of these things before investing or trying to globally scale something, which brings me on to scalability in terms of like the transferability of a technology from one place to another, the capacity and talent needed to being able to drive an adaptation or adoption. And then finally, the last one is the business model. Is something financially viable? Which sounds easy to say, but in the development sector is a massive challenge to answer positively. Right? So especially in an early stage innovation, where you know you need to prepare for iteration, but you need to have a pathway for that. And a lot of the principles that underline these things are very similar to the private sector. In fact, a venture fund would have something very similar to this in terms of how they select and make investments. And it was trying to bring some of that discipline to the public sector. 10 UN agencies participated in the review of that. And I saw the other day that since I left, it's been rolled out, and the team there have done a fantastic job on that one. Yeah, I think, and last point is that while we built that for ourselves, it looks like other UN agencies will adopt it, and country offices will as well. So it brings a bit more discipline to the practice.
From your experience, what are some of the most effective strategies for fostering a culture of innovation and driving meaningful change within organizations, whether they are NGOs or businesses?
I think that one of the big factors depends on the size of the business. Okay, so I think in a big business or big organization, just the sheer coordination can be quite a heavy lift, right? Especially if you're trying to move something from a global level. So having strong coordination and knowledge sharing is an important part of it. I think what you also find in some places in the private sector, I've seen it as well as in big organizations, is that often there's a lot of talent and creativity hidden within the organization. And those people, those staff that have so much to offer might not be in a position to do so because they're working in a very structured format. Here's your job, go do this job, right? But they're also out working with communities, seeing problems every day and coming across really amazing ways to solve problems. So part of it is about making sure you have programs in place to empower staff. The staff also need to feel that they can take a risk. I think where you've got a culture of blame, then you're going to have a problem, right? And that comes down to leadership. And it can be policy based, but it could also just be, leaders visibly saying, we want you to challenge the orthodoxy here. We want you to do something different. Where there's and you don't have to be negative on innovation. You just have to not do that, right? If you don't send those signals, the lack of a signal in itself doesn't help. Right? So I think that, where we've got leadership that does that, it's important that people have the independence to create and work with government partners and communities. I think that you find that when you sit down with most governments, like there are people that will definitely collaborate with you to do that, right? There, a lot of people are looking for that advice and ideas and so on. So I think creating these networks, sending the right signals is a big part of it, these soft things.
From your vantage point, what are the most promising trends and technologies driving the clean energy transition? And what role do you see community ownership playing in accelerating this transition globally?
Probably talked enough about our own technology, so I won't plug that anymore. But I think the obvious one is artificial intelligence. And I think that the role of artificial intelligence is double-edged, because on the one hand, we'll see huge consumption increase of electricity because of the rapid adoption and scale of it. On the other hand, it's going to hold the secret to forecasting energy needs as well as energy outages, by the way, balancing of grids. It's going to play a critical role, even designing the materials that we'll use in the future of solar, for example, and the future of batteries. I mean, it can go all the way through the value chain. So I think that it was a massive opportunity for us, and it still feels like a big opportunity because the innovation is still relatively young. And then there's product innovation as well. You're talking to my co-founder, Nikolai, the other day. He's got a lot of experience working at Vestas, which is the big global wind turbine manufacturer. The innovation, even on the product side, which you often think is slower than technology, right? But on the product side, the R&D and the expense that goes into it, it has strong outputs as well. And the turbines are getting more efficient all the time, to the point where after maybe 9 years, right, the lifetime of a turbine could be up to 35 years these days. It used to be 20 years, right? So there's a longevity, but also you can upgrade now, and you should upgrade. And there's a lot of opportunities for upgrading, because the innovation in the product space means that turbine placement can actually be, again, very financially viable after a certain amount of years to produce way more energy. So it isn't always about a net new installation or park. Sometimes it's just about improving what we already have, because innovation is happening in the space.
In a recent post, you highlighted the surge in energy demand driven by EVs, heat pumps, and data centers. How can we ensure that this increased demand is met with clean energy? And what are the biggest challenges in achieving this?
Yeah, so for anyone not familiar, there was a report recently. It's kind of a landmark report every year that the International Energy Agency published, and it showed an explosion in energy demand. So in some parts of the world, it's actually been flat for a while, and everybody's saying, well, when's this demand going to come? Well, it arrived with a big bang. And I mentioned that the best comparison to make it tangible is that a new Japan in terms of energy demand was added last year alone, which is massive. At the same time, solar had its best ever year in terms of adoption and installed capacity. And a lot of that was driven by China, actually, which still says the rest of the world, we still have a bit of catching up to do. The EU needs to be investing about 3 times more money than it does today to reach our ambitious goals. And I think that what's often overlooked is that some of that money, while there does need to be continued massive investment, there's actually a lot of money in society. It's estimated that 173 billion euros could be mobilized from private pockets to support community energy in particular. And I think that if people understand also the returns that they can make, then they'll definitely do it. And I think that we need to be grown up about this. It's not, people aren't solely motivated by a cleaner environment. Most people don't want a worse environment, for sure, but people won't pay a premium for a clean environment, is what my own research uncovers when I was trying to set up Orklys in the beginning, and I was trying to understand the marketplace. The financial incentive, it plays a major role, particularly if you need to pay a premium. Now, you don't need to pay a premium anymore. It doesn't need to, and it shouldn't be positioned as something that isn't viable. There's rhetoric at the moment. We say, well, this technology isn't viable, it doesn't work. It does work. Not only does it work, in terms of the levelized cost of energy, right, which is how you measure your output for your efficiency of delivering energy from start to finish, wind and solar are world beaters at the moment, more than coal and oil. Yet we're still bringing new coal online. So I think that the opportunity is huge, but the competition is happening now on an economic basis. And when it comes down to the economics, renewables actually win. That's the place to invest. They're the most efficient, even with the fall in gas prices. So I think that there's a big economic opportunity there. If you can bring together that opportunity, the wallets of the public, right, the support and policy from the governments, and the technology and innovation, then I think it all comes together, and we can certainly meet these goals if we want to be ambitious about it.
What policy changes or investment strategies do you believe are most critical for fostering greater community ownership of renewable energy infrastructure?
So I think that there's a number, and we could go on for a while. So I'll try and be succinct. I think that on the financial side, I think the role the state can play is on the guarantee side. They might not need to always fund and subsidize. We're finding now that as renewable energy producers, we can compete on economic terms, right? But it would be great if they could guarantee the projects, because this risk profile you have at the beginning is big, right? You start off with a lot of risk. A lot of things can go wrong in the early phases of these projects over a long period of time. The energy communities need to be able to mobilize funds, either from the community or from other sources, to try and get this moving. And a guarantee that underwrites some of this, whether it's from a municipality or whether it's from national government, to protect the downside, would bring in a lot more investment from other people, because they'd be more willing to take a risk. And internationally, this exists. Governments do this already today. And I think that extending this to energy communities would be great, right? Because it would bring a lot more liquidity into the market to make these projects possible. That's one. On the policy side, I think that there's an issue when it comes to the grid. So in some ways, the grid is creaking in a lot of European countries where it's pretty old, and they're struggling to keep up with connections and supply coming online from the transport operators, as well as the delivery side. As a consequence, you can get these pretty massive taxes that are there to try and improve the subsidization of those creaking structures. But I think with an energy community, if you are producing and you can be independent of energy, you shouldn't be penalized on a tax basis for this. You should be a hero. But today you will still pay a lot of tax, even when you're actually removing a burden from the grid with your storage solutions. You'll pay a lot of tax when you ease the strain of the grid, which seems harsh. So I think that, alleviating some of these pressures, penalizing a renewable energy source on the same way you might penalize a fossil fuel based energy feels pretty unfair to me. So I think that would be good. And you actually will see at the EU level, you do see policy that encourages this, but because it happens at an EU level in a directive doesn't always mean a sovereign state will then go and implement it. There's different dynamics in different countries, and different people are making different levels of progress. But it'd be great to alleviate some of the penalization that happens. You shouldn't be penalized for trying to accelerate the goals, the renewable energy goals.
What are the key success factors for effective collaboration between communities, developers, investors, and policymakers in the clean energy transition?
Well, I think a lot of it comes down to permissions and authority. We have really heavy processes to be able to get moving. Recently in Germany, who had a great year last year for wind coming online, they're celebrating getting the approvals down to 24 months, 2 years. That's a cause for celebration. That only takes 2 years to approve a project, which to me sounds it's mind-boggling. Why does it take that long? It shouldn't, right? So I think that if industry can come together, and that does include developers, it includes government, it definitely includes energy communities playing a leadership role and being entrusted to move this forward. It includes technologists and innovators to provide solutions to update some pretty antiquated bureaucratic processes. Then, I think that there's a multi-stakeholder solution there for sure. So I think that's it. And I've got to say, there's plenty of people that work under a bureaucratic policy system that don't believe even in the policies that they have to enforce, right? But they don't have a choice because they can't change the policy themselves. So, I think that, it's easy to beat up on the people that oversee these processes. Actually, most of them, do want to accelerate this themselves. So I think it's coming together and coming up with creative solutions. Back in the UN days, we call that systems innovation, where you look at, from a policy perspective, what can you do? Sometimes it's about it's not about adding a new policy that does X, Y, Z. Sometimes it's just about removing barriers that you have in place. Just removing stuff on its own can free everybody up.
What advice would you give to aspiring entrepreneurs or innovators who want to contribute to the clean energy transition, particularly in the area of democratizing access and ownership?
So I'm smiling because it's a point close to my heart. I've worked on a lot of youth opportunity work in my time, and I do get asked for advice from time to time on these things. And what I would say is, go out and establish your own business that helps solve this problem. I think that, if you're a young person that has just graduated university and is struggling to find a job, I have family, friends, my godchildren with master's degrees in, biomechanical engineering, struggling to find a job. My advice is go and establish a company and be part of this, because I think that from an employment perspective, where employment is actually being added in the global economy, it's happening in two places. I actually should correct that to more European economy. It's technology and AI, but it's renewable energy is the other place. That is the place where young people can also get an opportunity, and it needs those fresh eyes to look at some of the processes in place to say, what have you done? You old people, we're going to come and fix this for you with some fresh perspectives. I think that would be my advice. My second piece of advice would be plenty of people are going to tell you that you're not qualified and that you should just go and find a proper job. And I would tell you to absolutely ignore those people. Have a bit of faith in yourself, because I think it needs people that are going to have the get up and go to contribute.
Looking at the global landscape, which countries or regions are leading the way in community energy initiatives? And what lessons can other countries learn from their experiences?
I'm a bit biased because of where I'm sitting here in Denmark, but I think you can find great examples in Denmark and Europe. For anyone looking for good examples, you can go to an organization called Rescope EU and just Google that, and they're kind of like an organization of energy communities that are members there, and you can find lots of good information in terms of who is doing what. So I think that that would be a good place to start if you're interested. In terms of the lessons, one of the big lessons, and I will mention it, a small plug, it's where we're at Orklys is trying to help, is there is actually a lot more publicly available data than you would imagine. And this publicly available data can massively inform your decisions that you make in terms of your planning. It can also help you avoid mistakes that are going to change your 24 months into 36 months problems, and utilizing this data is kind of key in your planning. So I'm talking about basic things like maps where you can and can't do things. Typically people have a plan, you just need to be able to find it. What we do is make that much easier to access so you don't make those mistakes. But I think that's a good lesson. What I've seen is people get tied up in knots, red tape, where they do a ton of work and then they find out about these plans and these restrictions. So, we're trying to help people get ahead of that. But I think being aware of the landscape that's a very important part of it.
How can individuals and communities best support the work that Orklys is doing? And what are some of the practical steps that can take to get involved in the movement towards greater energy democracy?
So I think, there's two ways you can be involved. One is you can be a leader. You can establish your energy community, and you can do this in addition to an existing job to try and get it moving. Or you can actually do it full time. For me, I think I see the people doing this as entrepreneurs. They're building energy businesses. It's how I see them. I respect them a lot. And I think that if you want to do that, you need some support in getting started. You can come to our website, orklys.com, click on the Energy Communities tab and register with us. You could just be at idea stage really early. It doesn't matter. We're happy to have a consultation with you. It won't cost you anything. And maybe we can give you some advice on how to get started. The other way you can participate is by joining an energy community. You can try and find one in your local area. You can go to some of the resources I already mentioned. You can sign up with us if you want to become a member and invest in a renewable energy community as well. We're building up a wait list of people that want to participate, and then we'll bring some really good opportunities to those people. So you can do that on our website as well. But yeah, those would be the two ways that we can support.
What is your personal vision for a future powered by clean energy? And what message would you like to leave with the Clean Titans community to inspire them to become more involved in the clean energy transition?
Your vision is for energy independence. I think with security issues today, with the challenges we have in our environment, the vision is that energy independence can revolutionize our approach to reaching our goals and leaving a much better planet for our children, which is the most important thing about all of this. That's the big picture. In terms of what people can do if they're thinking about it, I would say if you're on the fence about getting involved in something like this, I think you should just go out and do it. I think everyone has a role to play. Don't be scared or bamboozled by all of the terminology you'll come across. You'll definitely be able to understand it. It's not as complicated as everyone makes it out to be. So I think that if you really are motivated, then you should just jump right in.
When do you plan to come to the US?
Actually, we have people reaching out to us that would like to franchise our model and take it to the US. So maybe that is what we do. Yeah, we've had a couple of people that have approached us on that. But yeah, we'd love to come to the US. We need to get started here in Europe, prove the concept here, and then look at the US. So we might be a couple of years away if we did that ourselves. But yeah, we are open to people that want to pick up and lead from the US in some kind of franchise model. We're open to suggestions.
Well, James, thank you so much for your time and your expertise. Please stay tuned for more exciting interviews like this, and keep watching, subscribe, like, share, ask questions and comments, and we'll get you the answers. Thank you. Until next time, stay tuned.
Thanks, Ali. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome.